So I think you have a pretty substantial part of your audience, which is not Orthodox. I mean, I know just a lot of Christians and just a lot of interested, relatively secular people watch your content. What do you think, what makes the Orthodox Church unique as kind of the heir of this symbolic interpretation of the world? And what makes Orthodox the home of people who would see the world in this way?
Well, I think that there's a practical way, which is in some ways the Orthodox Church has just preserved this language more. I think that, if you'd gone back 1,000 years in the West, you would have found similar structures, like in terms of the liturgy and the architecture and everything was all there, and typological reading was all there. But I think that ultimately there's a reason why Orthodoxy was able to preserve this, and it is the image of theosis. And I think that theosis is the key, right? It's the key to understanding that the world is full of his glory, and we're not kidding. Like, we're not joking about this. We do believe that God, upholds creation, that his word is hidden in all manifestation, and that is not arbitrary, that it looks like something. It looks like love, it looks like order, it looks like a song. And so it's like, so I think that the centrality of theosis in Orthodoxy, I think, is what has preserved the possibility of helping people see this and encounter it and practice it, and I don't think that, because I think theosis is real. So it's like, so how can I say this? So even though other Christians don't necessarily emphasize it or sometimes don't believe it, I still think that's what's keeping them together. So I do think that you can still encounter, traces of that in other Christian traditions, but Orthodoxy definitely has the greatest symphony of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you see providentially, I mean, in the history of Western theology in the 20th century, I think people can miss just how deeply shaped a lot of Western theology was by the fact that you had all of these Russian emigre theologians coming over and kind of, in certain ways, drawing out threads that were still there, but were kind of dusty. And now you have people in the West talking about theosis in terms which would be very intelligible to the church fathers and to Orthodox theology today. And so I think that's really providential. And I think, that's, to the extent that we can see what God is doing, it's just intriguing to me that lots of people seem to be independently or relatively independently talking about symbolism in the way that, the church talks about it, in the way that you're talking about it. And so it's an incredible...
No, that's not a coincidence. I think that we are in a Kairos moment. I think that, in some ways the ground was prepared for a very long time. And, 20 years ago, my brother and I were talking about these symbolic ideas and symbolic patterns and everything, and we couldn't talk about it with anybody. You just couldn't, because not only did they not understand what we were saying, they didn't understand the subject, like what exactly we were talking about. And so now we find ourselves in this moment where, like you said, independently in some ways, these kind of fruits have grown up. I don't know why. I don't know exactly how that happened, but it feels like all of a sudden I can talk about things and you can talk about things and people know what you're talking about. They understand it and it's coherent. And, you can talk to Bernardo Kastrup and you can say something as crazy as, the Son of Man sits at the right hand of the Father, and he'd be like, yeah, I get it, I get it. And it's like, how did this happen? Like, How can I talk about logos and talk about, this type of imagery, and then even a scientist will understand the structural relationship I'm trying to make, and will be able to at least understand that I'm not just spouting off woo-woo magic. There's a structural reality here to what I'm talking about, if you can see it.